on the south.
All right, hold the perimeter. Everyone else on me, eyes sharp. Nice and easy. We don't want to spook the neighbors.
Hey guys, Pete here. The end of Better Call Saul is officially underway, and I'm here to discuss the latest chapter in what's shaping up to be a fantastic final season. Point and Shoot once again drove home the idea that actions have consequences, and it tied up a lot so that they can get around to answering the big questions. Jimmy and Kim just need to keep telling the lie they've been telling. Easy enough, right? I guess we'll see. I'm taking off my tie but leaving the collar button just in case, and I'll be getting into everything that happened right after I warn you that this video will contain spoilers for episode 8 of Better Call Saul's 6th season. And with that out of the way, let's get into it. We do pick up right where the last episode ended. Like candles still exactly the same size, fresh blood still streaming down the wall, and mid-freakout watching Howard's blood pool at our feet right where we left off. We don't get there until after we have an ominous teaser that starts off as a beautiful shot of a beach that slowly reveals that it's anything but. By the time you see the Namaste plate, it's probably already come together that this is a flash forward showing what the cover story of Howard's disappearance looks like. Lalo has a plan, and he's going to need Jimmy and Kim to focus so he can explain it. What I love about this plan is that when you first hear it, it sounds a little flimsy. Why would Lalo leave the crucial part of his plan against his arch enemy up to these two inexperienced, cowering civilians? The answer doesn't come until later, but it's so satisfying when you finally put it together. What he tells them is he wants Jimmy to get in his car and drive over to someone's house and shoot them. There's a reliable, idiot-proof revolver in the glove box, and all they have to do is point and shoot. It'll be no problem at all because this guy is a house cat. He almost looks like a librarian, but don't be fooled because even a house cat can scratch. With the hard part out of the way, just take out the camera and do the exact same thing, point and shoot. In what initially seems like a puzzling turn, Jimmy tells Lalo that he needs to send Kim. And I suppose this is as good a place as any to point out the incredible performances these actors deliver. Bob Odenkirk sells that he's stunned while he shifts into survival mode. Ray Seahorn had me sort of sympathy shaking along while her character is absorbing the reality of the situation. And Tony Dalton delivers one more example of the adaptability that exists right next to his menacing core. For my money, the brilliance of this scene is in Jimmy's decision. Of course, no one watching was thinking they should send Kim. It even takes annoying Lalo to the point where he just agrees to shut them up. If Jimmy were to go, he would have to do exactly what Lalo wanted because Kim's life would be at stake. By sending her, he's at least opening up possibilities. And I think this hits home when he looks her in the eyes and tells her that she has to go. I believe at that moment, Jimmy has to accept that this might be the last time he ever sees her. That he might be sacrificing himself so she has a chance to live. And wow, bravo Gordon Smith. Talk about putting a character in a situation where they have to make a tough but ultimately correct decision. After being reminded that she'll need her shoes, Kim does follow the plan like a person who is trapped inside a nightmare that they can't wake up from. There's a great shot where she's sitting at a light and a police car pulls up next to her with its window rolled down, which presents her with an out. Because she doesn't take it, it proves her dedication to doing what she has to do to get back to her husband, who we now know has been tied up and left behind as Lalo puts the next step of his plan in motion. Sending someone to Gus's house was only part of what he had in mind. I'm sure he'd be happy if they were able to kill him, but ultimately it doesn't matter. What he's counting on is a diversion that would pull his guys away from the super lab. And from there, things play out like you'd think they would if you've been paying attention. Kim is intercepted at the door and pulled into the house by Mike. He learns that Lalo sent her and is at their apartment right now. That has him pull Tyrus from the laundry and send him there. And that presents the opportunity for Lalo, who's waiting out front, to get inside and find the lab. Gus decides to call and ask him some questions, and the idea that they were able to talk Lalo out of sending Jimmy sets off an internal alarm. That doesn't sound like the Lalo he knows, and he starts to realize that this is all just a diversion. From there, he heads to the lab and the showdown is on. I've been convinced that Lalo would have to die before Better Call Saul came to an end, and that left me wondering how they could make that seem satisfying, especially as it started to seem more and more likely that it would happen with the gun at the lab. The answer to that comes in the most obvious way. You just put these two amazing characters in a room together and let them taunt each other. From Lalo's perspective, he has the upper hand and will finally get what he came for. He relishes the impending victory by talking into a camera for Don Eladio's benefit. But the Chicken Man has his backup plan ready to go, and he has his own words for their boss before he springs into action. This somewhat brief exchange brings back so much of the character's histories. From the moment he was introduced in the series, everything he's done has brought Lalo to this place with the sole purpose of taking down Fring. Gus has been playing the long game of exacting his revenge, and he even gets to explain it out loud to Lalo before he turns the tables. And I would give him extra points for calling Eladio a greasy, bloated pimp. We had seen him set the stage back in episode 5. He can cut the lights with the extension cord and knows exactly where his idiot-proof revolver is hiding in the dark. He turns out to be the one to point and shoot and not stop until it's empty, and he is able to hit his target. The obvious problem with killing off a character like this is that you don't get any more Tony Dalton. But since he did have to go, I think they did the character justice. Gus is able to pull himself together enough to stand over him to witness his last moments, and watches as Eduardo Lalo Salamanca dies laughing. The episode doesn't end there, though. Remember, I mentioned consequences at the beginning, and they set those up before we cut away. I thought it was a great choice to start this off with Lyle, who's the kind of guy who goes in early to open singing the jingle of the place where he works. He learns that he's going to have to open and close 2 days in a row. Gus tells him that it's because he was called out of town, but it's really because he took a couple of bullets in that shootout. Jimmy and Kim are reunited when Mike brings her home. Neither are unaffected by what they just went through, but they are both safe for the time being. Mike and his guys will take care of cleaning up Howard's body, but they're going to have to jump right back into their lives as if nothing happened. And you can see that this is something both characters would understand intellectually, that it's necessary. But as viewers, we know that this is easier said than done. They may have the Sandpiper settlement coming in, but how do they go back to enjoying their takeout in the same room where they saw Howard bleed out? Back at the lab, they dig a grave to bury these two characters together. You can see that Mike has feelings about Howard ending up there because he was definitely not in the game, as he removes his wallet, wedding ring, and shoes to tie back into the cold open. Ending the episode by burying them together is certainly a way to answer the question of how the cartel and lawyer sides of the story would eventually come together. Now when you watch Breaking Bad, it'll be hard not to think of them when you see the Super Lab. Lalo certainly got what was coming to him, but at least he got a payoff for all this time looking into Gus. He got confirmation that he was right about his suspicions. And as I alluded to earlier, Gus does put him in his place. He even spells it out for him, essentially saying, look, I'm smarter than all of you guys. That's why I'm doing this. You're all terrible. You're just like jackals. And you can almost imagine Lalo having a respect for this person who is taking him down. On the other hand, Howard just played the game and lost. And what's worse is that he'll be remembered as a drug addict that killed himself thanks to these two worlds colliding. It's a dark way to end things for him, and it makes you wonder how bad things might get for the ones who managed to make it out alive. Because the idea of Kim dying is not one that I've ever thought was going to happen, but it really looks like it's not going to happen after this. At the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are working out exactly as they were planned. But then something else comes along and well, then that happens too. It's all about the aftermath now and what comes next. And with 5 episodes to go, it's kind of exciting to not know for sure what will happen. I don't think this episode was quite as good as the previous one, but it did do a fantastic job of wrapping up the inevitable parts of the story. It's a little bit surprising that they killed Lalo off with so many episodes left, but just as was the case with Nacho, it makes perfect sense now that I've seen it. With the big question of how Lalo dies out of the way, we can focus on what happens between Jimmy and Kim, and there's still half of a regular season left for them to get into that. We watch them both reinforce their dedication to each other in this episode, and that makes it a little harder to see where their split happens. Jimmy made the choice to sacrifice himself by sending Kim, and I imagine part of him was hoping that she would just keep going. I doubt he thought she would ever pull the trigger. I certainly didn't think she would, even as she was ringing the doorbell. I suppose the question is whether she thought she would do it, and I don't think they make that clear. What you see is someone who knows she has an hour to get back to her husband, taking each step as it's presented to her. Right after she left, I was thinking about how would she react to this decision, that Jimmy's sending her out to do this dirty work, but by the end I think it's clear that she's worked that out in her head, that it was the right decision. Either way, we never saw her falter, and the hug when they're reunited is almost unnecessary to show how they feel about each other. The real problem is what living with this situation will do to them. I thought Jimmy catching that glimpse of them putting Howard's body in the refrigerator was a nice way to emphasize this. Sort of like, hey, look, it's not all bad. At least you got a new refrigerator out of the deal. It reinforces this idea I've had that the Saul routine in Breaking Bad is just a coping response from all this stuff that he's going through. And that means the big question is, how will Kim handle it? This was Gordon Smith's final writing credit for the season. It was another great job to follow up Rock and Hard Place. Kind of interesting that he crafted fitting endings for both of the characters that came about from Saul's line in the desert. I think since the big events were mostly expected, where the writing excels here is in the details. Even though it was super dark, they managed to slip in some funny moments to keep things a little lighter. I liked seeing Lalo put the gag on Jimmy as he was saying it wasn't me, it was Ignacio, as a wink and a nod to the fact that we've been discussing that line forever. And I don't know why exactly, but I thought it was hilarious when Kim pointed to the fake Gus in that scene. There were a lot of great references and a lot of shots that mirrored things we'd seen before. Off the top of my head, Jimmy tied up looking at Howard reminded me of Walter and Ozymandias. Mike coming in to clean up Jimmy and Kim's apartment reminded me of his first appearance at Jane's apartment. Lalo meeting his end through the object of his revenge reminded me of Hector and Gus's next face-off. And there are just too many more to name, but the good news is we'll be bringing the live stream back again tomorrow, so I'm sure we'll be discussing some of that when we're talking there. Since Vince Gilligan directed this episode, I don't have to point out that it was visually stunning, but I wanted to take a second to appreciate the use of the teaser. This is something that has become so common that it's almost hard to remember how much these added to the experience of watching Breaking Bad for the first time. This one reminded me of that and all of the great ones that came before it. Starting off with this beautiful shot that catches your attention and then watching it shift to becoming a lot more unsettling. It's something that a lot of other shows have tried to recreate, and you'd be hard-pressed to come up with someone who does it better. It's all got me super excited to see where this thing goes next, and I think that's a great place to leave things. Let me know in the comments what you thought about the first episode in this final run, how you feel about Lalo's ending, and what that means for the rest of the season. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. And thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.